In a week where the eyes of the sporting world are on a pocket of Gloucestershire, the League One promotion race is in full swing. Argyle are making smooth and stylish progress on the outside of the pack, and this time as the League One season turns for home, would Argyle make a blunder at the top of the hill against Wigan, or will they continue their stylish progress? Welcome along to the latest edition of the Green and White podcast, brought to you by Argyle Life. As you can tell, I'm in full Cheltenham mode. I only finished working about half an hour ago, and I get to do the same again all tomorrow, which is great fun. So welcome along. John, Adam and Graham are with us tonight. We are going to be, as you see, we're without Sam down. We're doing our best Argyle impression. He's on the sidelines now for a couple of days, just resting up for the weekend. Hopefully it won't be too serious. We'll get some scan results and we'll find out for the weekend. So you can all anticipate a negative reaction at the end of the Reading game. As always, like, comment, subscribe.
And it turned out the podcast who came in for him was better than him anyway.
As always, like, comment and subscribe. There might be an issue with YouTube, X comments tonight. When I logged onto the stream, there was a message about streaming to X. So if you are watching on our X profile and do want to get involved in the program, head over to YouTube. It's so much easier to comment on there, and the box is bigger. So if you do want to rant about injuries and Derriford and Tom Cleverley and things, then head over to YouTube. That is the place to do it. Now, Adam Price was in Wigan last night at the Brick Community Stadium, and it was full of 8,000 people, of which 554 of them were fellow maniacs who made the trip to the Northwest. Adam Price, take it away.
I shall do, yeah. And well, I mean, I think full is quite an interesting word to describe the Brick Community Stadium yesterday, where I thought it was one of the most remarkably ill-attended matches I've been to for a while, but that didn't matter because the mood was predictably excellent. And if I am to run through this, it's generally only going to be glittering praise for what we saw, because from the first minute it was clear that we were by far the better side, the better coach side, the side with the better quality, and we started developing a lot of good chance to the result. I think, to be honest, we could and should have taken the lead before we eventually did. I think there was one particular chance through Alex Mitchell from a set piece where he's pretty much got a free header in the middle of the box and has managed to put it wide. He's not a goal scorer, admittedly, but he was clearly disappointed that he's not found the target. It was a really, really good opening. And
I think I have to interject here and say that if he was here, he would say he has great technique.
He would. But in fairness, he'd also say that header was from 35 yards, which, as I said, in the middle of the box. I don't know, we can have a debate with Alex when he's next on. Invite remains open. And luckily never cost us in the end, or it could have done quite shortly afterwards, in fact, because there was a really weird incident where we've kind of just lost the ball in the middle of the Wigan half, and Joe Taylor has just ran around the length of the field.
Adam, we didn't lose the ball. We had Ronan Curtis and Herbie Kane trying to be too clever from a free kick.
Yeah,
Herbie Kane got robbed, and Joe Taylor ran the length of the pitch before not scoring. But
to be fair, yeah, that does sound a lot like losing possession in my book. But potato on that one. So
it also sounds like how most of our play in and around the final third went for that first 20 minutes, Adam, didn't it? There was a lot of endeavour, and very little
Yeah.
if you
So
like.
we were the better side, and it was the set piece chance from Mitchell that was our big opening, and then they had theirs as Edwards has, I think, just about kept Taylor honest, and he's put it over the bar. It seemed like it had gone way over from the away end. I think it's actually closer than it initially appeared, but unfortunately, their top scorer this season. He's their top scorer in the league, having played 9 games heading into that. So it shows how good Wigan have been in front of goal all year, but he's missed that one. And it's fortunate. And then from there, I think we get on top again. I think Boateng may have a shot on target before we eventually get the goal. And it's, another bizarre incident, I'd say, because it's another set piece. The ball comes in, and I have, and this is a story that I think a few of you will be aware of from our group chat. I've been told by an incredibly inebriated gentleman next to me that I'm going to get bundled if this goes in. And when I see the ball floating directly into Sam Tickle's arms, I'm like, well, it's nice to feel safe, isn't it? I wasn't. Tickle drops it. Bim Pepple's there, and yeah, I'm very quickly on the ground, but it was worth it because it was a lead we deserved, and one that as you say, Joe, it wasn't a flowing performance. We weren't getting too many chances from open play, but we also were clearly the better side. If the piece was how we needed to break through, then that was it, and we did do. And of course, as we were saying, with his striker's instinct, Bim Pepple on hand, as he's so often been recently, to put that in and give us the lead. And if we hadn't had free-flowing football before, oh my God, did we afterwards? I think the number of passes and the number of players involved in the second goal just a couple of minutes later, it's one of the best goals we've scored this season, arguably the best. Just the team move to get the ball, to work it from side to side, to play it in behind, to get Boateng there, who's not necessarily known for his technical prowess, but have him well involved and to pick out the pass and to get this. It's honestly, I've watched that back a few times now, and I'm in awe every time. It's a really, really well worked goal, and fully deserved, because I think there was a mood in the ground actually that when we'd taken the lead, it had almost a Blackpool feel about it, that there's a few minutes to go until half time. We can really put them to bed here. We're that much on top. To go in at 1-0 might feel like a little bit of an injustice because we're better than that. And that goal demonstrated exactly why. It's genuinely a fantastic move, and one that, as I say, I've watched a few times, and I'm going to watch a few more times before I move on. It really is superb, and it put us in at halftime 2-0, which is it's exactly what you're looking for on a Tuesday night, a midweek away game that feels like it has all the hallmarks of being a tough one, particularly when they've won their last 2 home games 1-0. It arguably felt like it could have been that when we weren't taking the lead. So to go in 2 up, very impressive. Of course, we did have to weather, I wouldn't call it necessarily a massive storm, but of course, in these circumstances, you expect the home team to come out and have a little bit more pressure than perhaps you'd seen in the first half. They could hardly have less, to be fair, the amount we were on top. But yeah, there were a few more openings. I think Murray, who scored in the reverse fixture, might have forced a save from Ashby Hammond, who had a couple of shaky moments, but again, one of his far better Argyle performances, and that was fantastic to see. He does also pull off a very good save from Taylor just after Jack McKenzie has done the same. We've had a lot of refereeing decisions go against us in the season, it's fair to say. I think if we were to do a ref watch today, it would only be fair to say that Wigan clearly should have had a penalty midway through the second half. The ball hits the outstretched arm of McKenzie. It's not a
great. Adam, can we just check? Did it not take a deflection off Mackenzie's body? Because somebody who was at the game last night did intimate that there was a deflection that might have caused...
Well, a man directly to my left, as it happens, seemed to see that. I mean, I don't know what his vantage point was, because it certainly wasn't mine. No, it looked very blatant at the time. I mean, to be honest, my first reaction actually, other than that seems to be a penalty, is that Luca Ashby-Hammer's done really well to keep it out anyway. It is a deflection, it's looped up, the keeper's got there and, pulled off a really good save. So I'm applauding that as the appeals are going on. And yeah, we've got away with one there. I think there were a few comments that it's possibly the most biased refereeing performance in our favour we've seen all season. So it's nice for it to fall that way for a change, I suppose. And just, yeah, I mean, I never really in my life had too much sympathy for about the 4 Wigan Athletic fans that exist. But if I'm a Wigan fan and I've seen the decisions that have gone against me, or gone against my side, against Argyle this season, that penalty being denied yesterday, along with the one that Tolai won in the reverse fixture, would certainly irk me a little bit. But it is what it is. We've all seen it and it's happened to us, so it's nice for the shoe to be on the other foot. And at that point, we've gone straight up the other end and put pressure on again. Won a set piece fairly quickly, where I think Owen Dale, who I know we'll come on to later, has had one of his better games in Argyle shirt, will probably be disappointed he didn't score from one of the set pieces, but we were back in soon after for a bit of a comedy of errors, really, at the back for Wigan. Their defender is, in trying to put the ball out when he has more time on the ball than he thinks, somehow managed to strike his own post. Ball's come back out. Caleb Watts has managed to get on it, and it's a really nice finish in the bottom corner to really put the game to bed then. If there was Wigan pressure, if there was that wave of momentum, the penalty non-decision killed a little, and the third goal certainly did. It was game over at that stage. I know they hit the crossbar quite late on, but yeah, by that stage it was done. We come away not only with a really good victory, but a chance actually to use our substitutes to get minutes rather than being forced to change a game, which I know has been something that we've struggled with. I look, for example, to a few games at Mansfield, maybe Rotherham, arguably, where subs have made us weaker when we're looking for something, whereas this one, it felt great to be able to bring a few players on. Seb Campbell making it is his league debut, I'm right to say, wasn't it, that he had yesterday? So really good for perfect. So that one's come through. The fact that he was given the honour of fist pumping the crowd at the end was a surprising but fun one all the same. And yeah, just put the gloss on what was a really good performance, a really good result, and yes, kept us dreaming for a little while longer.
Absolutely. And bearing in mind the amount of key match incidents that have gone against us this season, Tom Cleverley did reveal, didn't he, in a press conference not too long after Christmas, that he'd been contacted by, I think it's Mike Jones as a head of the lower league referees, to tell him that we are the number 1 team in League One to have had key match incidents go against us in games, whether that's penalties not given or things given against us and things. I mean, let's not forget, it wasn't too long ago, in 45 minutes of football, in fact, no, in 20 minutes of football, we should have been awarded 3 penalties at home park and we won. So Wigan fans might not believe it, but perhaps these things do have a case of evening themselves out. It was a totally dominant performance, Graham. Why don't you kick us off by talking about player impact on the game, and one man had quite a big impact on the game, as he has been having on several games of late.
Yeah, I'm a fully signed up member for the Bim Pepple Appreciation Society, and I think most, if not all, the Argyle fan base very much are. There's barely been in fact, I can't remember a player who, let's be fair, didn't have the best of starts. I think it was at the Cheltenham game where he missed the penalty in the EFL trophy match. And then there was the online abuse. And I think that was the moment that probably turned it for him, because Ian Newell and Passotti got behind him, sponsored him, and there was an outpouring of love for him. He had, I think, the kind of mission work that he did came to the fore, and slowly but surely, and then, to be fair, Lawrence Eli's shadow, he's quietly emerged. But I think it's probably last 12 games, is it 10 goals in the last 12 games that he started? and his record in goals per minute played is only second to Haaland in the whole of the 92 clubs, which when you think of that is a remarkable feat. But it's the manner of the goals. I mean, he's had left foot strike from miles outside the box one game, right foot strike miles outside the box another game, powerful header. The goals last night, the first was an instinctive finish. I mean, that was Tommy Tynan at his best. The ball dropped down, goal. And, he was first to react. It was in the back of the net. So much so you couldn't clearly see what the hell had happened. How did that go in? And then the second goal, as Adam eloquently described, one of the best moves of the season. And he just powered it in. I mean, it was a cracking finish. What more can we say? I mean, he must be on the cusp of the Canadian World Cup squad. That they must be watching him, because there's no player in Europe who's sort of doing that sort of scoring rate. And has he got the ability to play at a higher level on the evidence of the games we've seen in the last 12 years? Absolutely. And I mean, it's ironic, isn't it? Now we're all moaning about his release clause when we were worried about Laurent Elias. It's a certain irony, but I mean, he's on a long contract to the end of 29, I think. So that will help our favour in terms of whatever the release clause is. I mean, interestingly, his agent is the same as Michael Bader's. So I don't know quite. So we've obviously got a good connection with his agent, but surely he must be thinking, well, there's an opportunity. If we get promoted Championship, there's a fair chance he might stay. But if we don't, and we'll come on to the financial realities, there's a danger that we're going to lose him. But what a turnaround, what a player. But above all, what a lovely guy.
Absolutely. John Alsop, your first role in tonight's programme is to talk about your player focus.
And I'm going to steal Graham's from Saturday, who I sense he might have liked to talk about again, Malachi Boateng. Look, obviously he's played a lot of minutes for us this season. We discussed him on Saturday, as I just mentioned, as part of that 2-1 win over Doncaster, a game in which he got a lot of plaudits, both from Graham and from people in the comments, for his second half performance, kind of stepping up the energy and his impact on the game. And clearly that made a difference to our team performance, because we were much better in the second half than in the first that day. He's a player who I generally like. I can't say he's one of my absolute favourites. I think he's a steady player who tends to do a job. I've been frustrated at times by his sort of, play with the ball at his feet, which can be erratic. And we were discussing on Saturday how, Tom Cleverley seems to absolutely love him. There are certain managers who just love certain players who aren't necessarily the one that you would expect it to be. And Cleverley clearly really appreciates him, as reflected in the amount of minutes he's played this season, but also what Cleverley said about him in press conferences. I think he said after the Blackpool game that Boateng was world class at the basics that day. It may have been the Orient game. I can't remember exactly which game it was, but quite a striking comment to make about a League One footballer. I have to say, last night for the first time, I thought that Boateng was as good as Cleverley clearly thinks he is, if that makes sense. He was unbelievable. Close to a 10 out of 10 performance, which I very rarely give. I wouldn't say he necessarily quite got there, but I gave him a 9 in my match ratings. And it wasn't the type of performance you necessarily expect. You expect him in there kind of breaking up play and doing the dirty work. He did certainly a bit of that, but we had a systemic tweak, which meant that he was pushed forward. And the way he linked our attack was incredible. He's essentially got 3 assists on the night. I mean, the first one I'm guessing won't go down as his, but he's the one who pressures Sam Tickle into an absolutely awful piece of goalkeeping, but Boateng has to be there to apply the pressure. And then, the next 2, it's really his kind of burst into the box and his cutback that has ended up in a goal both times. And I messaged Joe will attest to this. We were talking about it in our group chat. In the first half an hour or so of the game, we looked by miles the better side. We were in control in terms of tempo, in terms of, pushing up and stealing the ball back high up the pitch. But it really felt like we were sort of panicking when it got into the final pass or the kind of penultimate pass of a move. We were snatching at shots. There were poor decisions being made, passes being played overly quickly. And I said, I think this game is easily here for the taking for us if we just slow it down. If we slow down, we calm down and play with more composure. And no one exemplified that more than Boateng. Those 2 assists are just really calm pieces of play. There were countless other examples in the game where he played a ball either first time or after taking a few touches, just kind of played it into space, eased it into space. And yet that didn't come at the expense of speed. He got us away with a great ball clipped over the top, I think, for either Pepple or Dale to run onto down the left-hand channel at one point in the second half. There was one he sort of swished forward looking for Pepple later on, I think for Pepple, that didn't quite come off. But it's either Pepple or Watts was in acres of space on the edge of the box. And it was a really smart piece of vision to pick them out. The execution wasn't quite perfect on that occasion. But yeah, it showed a side to his game that we've seen it on occasion. Obviously, he's scored a few goals for us and been involved in other moves that have led to goals. But I thought last night he showed the best of a different side of his game. And yeah, it was critical. And, I think it's remarkable also, and we should give him his flowers for this, that being ever present in a side that have had so many injuries, it's not anything to sneeze at. Obviously the injuries, there's an element of personal history and luck and whatever else that's going into that. So it's not necessarily a slight on other players who haven't managed to stay fit, but considering the amount of energy that Boateng expends per game. Sorry, obviously Graham was mentioning that I think on Saturday that he's run from Plymouth to Newcastle over the course of the season, which is probably a little bit more like Plymouth to Tynemouth at this point. Let's just say after yesterday's game. He still looks fit. He doesn't look tired. He looks fired up. And I think he's going to be a super important player going into this incredibly important run of games we've got coming up. I was super impressed with him last night and delighted for him to have such a positive impact on the game in an attacking sense as well as a defensive one.
Adam?
So I'm following very similar lines here. So I'm sticking in midfield as John has, but I'm going to go for Herbie Kane because he's come in. He's played about it's around 90 minutes across 2 games that he's played, as I understand, maybe a little more. And it's just so obvious what he brings whenever he's on the field. Whenever we see him in the lineup, immediately you get the sense of the quality this guy has, and immediately you see what an impact he can have on a football team at this level. It's another conversation I was having in the ground yesterday, where isn't it just nice that we've finally been able to get our eyes on a player that we've been linked with for so long? We all know that the likes of the Josh Coburns, the Alessandro Giattas of this world, where we've clearly been interested in a player for a very long time, and for whatever reason it doesn't work. But yeah, Herbie Kane's one of those where we've been looking at for a very long time, and as soon as he's come in, you know exactly why we've been looking at him, because he's that good. And I think most impressive for me, I mean, the comment on screen is absolutely right. The way he's the game going into slow motion, which is is absolutely a compliment. His calmness on the ball is phenomenal. It's so easy, I think, particularly in a midfield, in a physical league, when you've perhaps got potentially in many games got a man fewer in midfield, to panic, to think, I've got to release the ball quickly, I don't want to get caught in possession here, and try and play a pass. Herbie Kane is so good at slowing that down and playing the correct pass and getting us to continue up the pitch. And yes, the reason I particularly want to bring up today, because yesterday actually I saw the same out of possession as well. I saw a player who was so intelligent at stopping those breakaways. I think there were a couple of occasions where Wigan were trying to work it down the flanks, and you wouldn't necessarily think it was his job, but it was Herbie Kane that was there on a couple of those times, making sure they couldn't quickly cut inside, slowing it down. It's clear that this guy has got a fantastic footballing brain, but potentially above any other attribute that he has. He's so intelligent both on and off the ball when he's at his best. And I think, as I said, we saw the fact that the time he's been on the pitch across the last 2 games, we've just looked really a cut above, quite honestly. Yeah, I love the comment on screen for like a midfield of Joe Walls and Herbie Kane and that's no slight on Boateng, who John has described has had a really tremendous game yesterday and a good run of form and deserves his place in the side as well. I just like once maybe. I mean, it may never happen, but if we just once see a Joe Walls Herbie Kane midfield, I think that's far beyond this level of football. But
I worry. Yeah. Do you think that would work though? I mean, because I think they're potentially too similar as players to complement each other, and maybe you need someone as dynamic as Boateng next to a Kane or a Rules who they kind of dictate the tempo a bit slower.
I was just thinking that as you were talking, John. I just wonder whether they both kind of cancel each other out in a way.
I would perhaps have thought that until yesterday when I saw how good Kane was in a defensive sense. And I do think Rawls actually has an underrated ability there as well, possibly not to the same extent, but I think he's got an all-round ability, a kind of like Jamie Nestle of role where he can fit into a midfield too like that. And I agree, it may not work, but I'd love to see it just once, just to get Joe Rawls back, maybe for the last game of the season if we're not in contention for anything, which of course hopefully we are. And yeah, I just love to see how it works because I feel like at their best, if they're both fit and firing, rather than being cancelling each other out, I think they could be brilliantly dynamic in the midfield too.
Adam, don't you think they'd fit a 4-3-3 much better?
I do as well. Yeah, I think we've got plenty of options there, and it was one where I think actually maybe you could have a look at playing Herbie Kane in a deep lying role a la David Fox 17-18 and have your Boateng and Rawls combination ahead. I think, yeah, we've got lots of options there, which feels really encouraging. And but that's a lot to decide. Obviously, fitness plays a role because it's very much a moot point if Joe Rawls never plays for us again. But right now, when I'm looking at the game and what we've had yesterday, I always felt like Herbie Kane, if he stayed fit, would be a good addition. I don't think I necessarily understood the extent to which he could contribute both in and out of possession and the footballing brain that he's got. And I'm really hoping he can stay fit and, much like Boateng, as John's described, be a crucial part of this run we've got coming up.
Just a reminder, as we're halfway through tonight's show, if you are watching on X and you do want to contribute on tonight's show, it would appear we got a slight issue getting comments through from X onto the program. So if you do want to get involved, head over to YouTube where you can find the channel and get involved in the comments there. As you can see, there are plenty of discussion, I should say, going on in the comment section so far. I'm just going to round off this section by talking about a player who has been much maligned by the Argyle fan base since he's come in. Whether or not you feel that's entirely appropriate or not is a different thing. But I want to talk about Owen Dale because I feel like it's necessary that praise is just as loud as criticism. And I actually thought last night, watching the game back today on the full match replay, because Sky Sports have really strange rules on what games they show and what they don't during a midweek, that I thought Owen Dale had an excellent game and perhaps his best game in an Argyle shirt last night. Now, I will accept that might not be particularly the highest bar of standard from this particular player, but I had a look earlier at his stats from the game, and obviously we all know that Owen Dale should have scored. The header that he had, that he put straight at Sam Tickle in the second half, that should be a goal. I'm actually starting to wonder if Owen Dale will actually ever score for Argyle. He obviously had that wonderful effort at Stockport that crashed off the crossbar. But Accidental Pilgrim in the comments is spot on here. He's a grafter. One thing that none of us as Argyle fans can ever do is say that Owen Dale hasn't tried. Because what you always get out of Owen Dale is a lot of endeavour and a lot of energy. Doesn't stop running. There is a question mark over the quality he brings in the final third, but his work rate is exactly, I think, what Tom Cleverley wants in the wide players in this team. Because the important thing about Owen Dale yesterday that I didn't realise until I looked at the stats earlier was some of his defensive contributions in yesterday's game as well. Now, according to FOTMob, Dale registered a couple of tackles. There were 4 recoveries in there. There was a vital interception at one point as well. It's his all-round game. There's a lot to work on with Owen Dale, and whether or not it's going to happen under this coaching, or whether or not he perhaps needs to drop down to League Two. I mean, look at what Ronan Curtis did. He went down to AFC Wimbledon. He had that phenomenal few months down there with them, and that's what's reignited his career. Perhaps that's what Owen Dale requires, is perhaps a drop down a level and then to become the star of the team on the wing. Whereas at the moment, he's being overshadowed by the likes of Pepple, Talai, Watts, Curtis on the wing. Sorinola, when he's played of late, has been really good on that left side, hasn't he? So fair play to him yesterday. I thought it was a really, really positive performance from Owen Dale. And let's not get it right. I wasn't on at the weekend. Obviously, I was up north, but he earned that start yesterday off his performance off the bench at the weekend. He'd fully earned the right to start, and I felt he took it with both hands yesterday, and he has made that place his own as we head into a huge game at the weekend, which we are going to touch upon later. We've already spoken about the penalty that wasn't given. I can't think of anything else that needs to come out of this game, because there's obviously a big talking point that came out over the weekends that we do need to discuss. Adam, John, do you have any AOBs on the Wigan game very quickly?
No, I don't think so. I thought they were disgracefully poor. And yeah, they were unlucky not to get the penalty, but you know, the being able to whine about a decision is really better than they deserve for that performance. And it's quite interesting how this league seems to have gone from a league where anyone could beat anyone seemingly on their day to a league where now, I mean, that's still possible. Obviously, we experienced that at Rotherham the other week. But it does seem there's been this kind of gradual kind of like bifurcation of the league into teams that are pretty or very good and teams that are pretty or very bad, which was not, I mean, obviously we were very bad at times in the first half of the season, but you know, it felt like a very unsettled league where there wasn't really much between a lot of teams. Now it seems like we are most of the time comfortably beating the teams that are down there. And yeah, and I really fear for them. And to be down there with a keeper as good as Sam Tickle as well is particularly an indictment. I mean, he made that terrible mistake for the first goal, but I thought otherwise he was quality. You know, his distribution is incredible for the level. He made that unbelievable save from Dale. I mean, Dale should score, but to get his foot to that and then be able to kind of tip it over the bar with his foot, extraordinary. Yeah, he's a keeper I've liked for a long time. I've genuinely no idea how he hasn't left and gone to a better club. Maybe he just loves the roar of the brick.com stadium home fans or whatever it's called. But he's
clearly too much of a fan of a pie barm, isn't he? That's the issue.
Well, obviously, as a goalkeeper, you need to be able to concentrate, so maybe the silence helps with that. But yeah, and I guess also funny to remember how Callum Wright would have been insane to come back to Home Park in January because the vibes were going so well for him at Wigan and were terrible at Home Park. Just yeah, things change, don't they? Sometimes life comes at you fast.
Absolutely. I think, to be fair, John, and your point about how the league sort of settled down and we're comfortably beating everybody at the moment, and the Rotherham game sticking out like a sore thumb, I think that now can purely be put down to my attendance at the New York Stadium. I don't think there's any other factor that can possibly determine that result. Let's move it on then, because there was some news come out over the weekend that really does need discussion, and that is an ITV West Country report that has said that a redundancy process is underway at Home Park. Now, this isn't an Argyle Life exclusive or an ITV News exclusive, because this was muted back in the summer, if I remember rightly. There was always talk that a restructuring of the football operations was underway. We expected a handful of redundancies. The figure I've seen muted about is 20. I'm not sure how true that figure is. Graham's going to shed some light on it in a second. But either way, this is concerning, because I'm going to produce the archetypal podcast host Fag Packet Mathematics. Record season ticket sales, record shirt sales, record income, record player sales, selling out week in, week out. And we are led to this position now where we are having to take cost-cutting measures to see ourselves through potentially some choppier waters ahead. Obviously, Fag Packet Mathematics aren't what financial reports are based on, and they're just very easy for us to talk about because we can think of them off the top of our head. But Graham Clark, why don't you flesh this out a little bit for us as best you can?
Yeah, I think what we've got to do is go back to that fateful, I think it was 1st of December fans forum, where Andrew Parkinson wasn't there, although he was said to be there, and Paul Burns stepped forward to present the financial outcome of the championship season and predictions for this coming season. And I'm going to read it out, so I apologise, but it's important to say, because this is what Simon Hallett said at the time. It is, however, becoming more difficult to remain financially sustainable, even at League One level. Across the EFL, costs, including player wages, continue to rise and revenues are simply not keeping pace. This means the majority of clubs in the EFL are incurring losses which must be paid for in some way. And I think the average loss in League One last season was 4 to 5 million. And and I think Burton made a loss of 8 million. So that just puts it into perspective. Clubs seek to make profits from player trading. That was one of the pillars of our pathway to sustainability. But many continue to rely upon the support from owners and shareholders. The extent of losses in League One is greater than when we were last in the division in the 101 season. And so the challenge is becoming more difficult as each year passes. That trading has been essential because we've made operating losses before player sales in 5 of the last 6 years, totaling almost 14 million. So I think that partly answers your question, Joe. Those losses were partly covered by transfer fees and partly by shareholders, principally Simon himself. This is the key sentence. This year, meaning this financial year, with poor recruitment, interesting comment at the time, and fewer saleable assets, again, interesting comment at the time, that trading is unlikely to be there. The result is that shareholders, principally him, will have to cover a much larger share than the loss in the last season. This is not sustainable. And if you remember, afterwards, after the meeting, it became apparent that he lent Argyle 9.8 million in July last year, in addition to 2.6 million the previous season. So that's a total of 12.5 million. So that just gives you an understanding of where we are. And so turning to the emergence of the story, I think it was because Argyle probably have to go through a process where redundancies are at stake. And somebody obviously gave word to West Country and they got hold of the story before Argyle had formally announced it. That's what happens. Then the BBC did an online interview with Paul Byrne. And there was one sentence which I think is sort of, should I say, upset people with a longer memory. And I'll read it out. We're not at the stage where administration is a challenge because Simon's there to support us. Now, there's been all sorts of interpretations of that. And obviously, being 15 years ago at the heart of the administration period, I have to say it wasn't the wisest choice of word because it may have alarmed people more than perhaps it was intended to. And then you couple that with his word perilous, which he used at the fans forum. So clearly, I think it's being
very quickly, Graham. Oh, hang on. I don't know how that's happened. Nobody wants to see that. Just very quickly, Graham. He's doubled down on the perilous comment again in the BBC Spotlight interview, isn't he?
He has, yeah. So, but he's an accountant, And if you listen to his words, he talks about financials all the time. So I think the move from an accountancy to chief executive, I think in fairness, and he probably would admit it, when you do media presentations, you've got to be word perfect, because the Simons found in fans forums and Andrew Parkinson, people like us go look at every word, every nuance, and interpret whatever we like to interpret for our own outcomes. The truth of it is, I mean, it depends how the season ends, but at the time Simon made the statement, he wasn't predicting significant transfer income. And now we're in the situation where we've got two players who might make up the loss situation. So this situation has changed, but they're going through a proper process, and I think it amounts to 1 in 7 of the permanent staff. So it's serious, and we've got to be aware. We as fans don't want club employees to be the wrong end of this, and we've got to have every sympathy. And it's a very difficult situation. I'm sure Simon is sat there wishing it hasn't happened. But if you look at the employment numbers from the Championship to League One when we were there last time, there's a massive difference, and we've enhanced all the commercial activities. We've maxed out in every area that we operate in terms of attendances, hospitality, commercial. I don't think there's any more we can do in terms of revenue. The only thing we can do is player trading, as Simon said, and cost cutting. And cost cutting, unfortunately, to balance the books, has employment implications. And I think Inigo Passotti today, he made it, there's 135 permanent staff, between 150 to 200 match day staff, steward, gate people, hospitality, retail staff are 10. So it's 1 in 7 of those. And, my heart goes out to everybody. I mean, going through that administration period when forget the staff weren't paid. If it wasn't for the Green Taverners, Paul, to be fair, wasn't at the club at the time, but the word administration hits hard for Plymouth fans because it has a totally different connotation. It may have been that was it Andy Burkett, I think, who was the questioner. His question wasn't cut into the interview. It was just the outcome of what he said. So he might have said, are we threatened with administration? And he might have said what he said. We don't know. Bit of speculation. He shouldn't have used the word administration. I'm sure he regrets it. And but move on. The most important thing is the well-being of the staff who may lose their jobs.
Absolutely, and first and foremost, that is the first thought here, isn't it? Is that anything up to 20, if that is the
I think it's 18, Joe. I think
18 is it? So anything up to 18 staff could become unemployed, and there's stress and all sorts of issues that come without obviously the fact that you're going to lose your job. So absolutely, the support has to go to the staff at the moment. We've spoken about the poor decision making over the last 18 months and things. We've stretched this elastic band now as far as we can take it. Whatever we say now is going to regurgitate it. Adam, John, come to you on this. I just find it really, I don't know what the correct adjective is. I find it really frustrating that
Depressing.
it is depressing. After a number of really good years where everything just felt so good, so quickly, everything feels so perilous. I'm going to use Paul Barnes' word, perilous again, because as Graham and Ian Newell said in the comments, he's used the word administration, which was ill-advised. He will obviously be responding to a question that was put to him about that, but just the fact the word's out there automatically now triggers red flags. On top of, I mean, the word redundancy is bad enough. it's just a kick in the stones, this, isn't it? When things were just starting to pick back up again.
Joe, can I just recall something else that may be part of this? We've recruited a number of players, apparently on fairly high wages, on long contracts, and this is in the, if you remember, the Stuart Webber era, the run up to summer window. Now, whether that's part of it, because in reality, one or two of the players are equivalent to the same number of staff that may lose their jobs in terms of their wages. Let's put it into perspective. So we've got to bear that in mind. And I think with Derek Adams going forward, I mean, famously, he's never signed a player for more than £30,000, and we're going to keep trusting that in 17 years. But I think our approach this coming window will be very, very different, and there won't be high wage contracts, and there won't be extended contracts other than the ones that we have.
John, did we just get excuse me, did everybody just get a little bit giddy when we didn't have experience in the right areas once we achieved that promotion? Because I've said it numerous times that from the moment we beat Port Vale, this football club changed. Whether the decision makers at the club liked that phrase or not, this football club became a totally different beast to what it was.
Look, I think two things can be true at once. Football is a very difficult business. Costs are spiraling in every walk of life, and in football, that's naturally hugely amplified because it had its own kind of inflation structure going on. At the same time, making decisions like hiring Wayne Rooney has consequences, and he's done all right for himself, so that's okay. With his podcast and his match of the day punditry. That's all I'll say about that.
Adam, do you have anything to add? Obviously, there's been a couple of comments come up on screen that it's depressing. We've had a good result, but we have to talk about this because this is very real. This isn't something any of us can bury our head in the sands about. This is a very real situation, isn't it?
Yeah, and I will echo the thoughts that the first thought has to be with the members of staff, or no doubt going through an incredibly stressful time. And yes, we will speak about certain club employees and whether having them in the position is the correct thing. We've done it with the management, we've done it with some board members, we've done it with the sports science and physio. All of that, none of that can be personal, and appreciate that everybody being out of work, particularly at any time, but an unsettled time like this is awful to think about, and our thoughts have to go through there. And in terms of where we are and what's got us here, I think John's put it in exactly the kind of way that I would have, because it seems like a lot of the statements and a lot of the discussion show just how valuable championship status was to us, and that losing championship status has caused us so much issues. So perhaps you shouldn't gamble that on a publicity stunt.
Yeah. Joe, I just want to address the administration, because again, 15 years ago, I was right in the middle of it. The reason why we went into administration was simple. We had an HMRC bill which we couldn't pay. Tax, NI tax and VAT. And the HMRC would just wanting to take a football club down. So the only alternative was to go into administration, because we didn't have the cash to pay the bill. That's basically it. Then it became apparent that there were loans taken out on the stadium. 1.7 with Lombard, 400,000 with Mars Point, 300,000 with the Plymouth Training and Development Trust, and they were secure creditors. We're not in that situation at all. We have a shareholder, and apart from, we've got a loan which I'll come back to in a minute. So there's no danger of administration. People have to understand that. I'm looking at everybody watching this tonight. The circumstances are totally different. We're not in debt to anybody other than the owner stroke shareholder, major shareholder. And I saw a comment come up about Forreston Park. The situation in Forreston Park was, and we were in the Championship when the decision was made, was that the City Council, Argyle, and the Community Trust and Albion have been working together for some time in putting together a project at the Brickfields. Simon was asked to put £11 million of money into it, and by doing so would secure another 11 million or so grant funding to create the whole future development. If he hadn't put that 11 million in, none of it would have happened. We wouldn't have the academy building. Argyle Community Trust wouldn't have had the hub. Albion wouldn't have the new 3G pitch and all the rest of it. So let's just put that into perspective. That decision was made by him and Jane at the time of the Championship. What we did when he was hoping to get the investor in was spend the money he thought that investor was going to be paying. So that was a number of improvements. Goals was bought, the pitch, the fans area, and so on. And he also spent money in the winter window in an attempt, to rectify the Rooney decision, and secondly to get a manager in. And we don't forget, I think it was our record transfer fee at the time, 1.7. So money was spent that was previously allocated for Forreston Park. Now what's happened is let's call it 10 million. He's loaned the club £10 million at a low interest rate. So Forreston Park actually is being built at a low interest rate from a loan from him. And that's got to be the best news. It's not money that would have gone anywhere else. That money was spent on doing the things that fans want him to do. Transfer fees, unfortunately having to pay ill-chosen managers and so on. So yeah, that's where we are, and I just want to make it clear. The administration is no threat whatsoever. It's a totally different circumstance. Forreston Park isn't the millstone around the neck that people think it is. It's a long-term future investment for the city, first of all, and the club through the academy and the Argyle Community Trust.
Yeah, I think we've probably covered every base we needed to here, and perhaps, in the future we might just do a special live, not an emergency podcast, because that would put out as many red flags as why Paul Brown used, but perhaps we will put out a episode with a couple of us sat talking about just the general situation. I think what it all stems down to, though, is something I've been saying for quite some time, and John said it, and Adam, I know, has banged this drum, and I think Graham has said it on a number of occasions. It just comes down to, over the last couple of years, just inexperience in decision-making positions at this level of elite sport. And, there was exception taken to the comment that was made at Fans Forum a couple of years ago about not having football people in football decision-making positions. Well, football is a totally different business to every other business that's out there in the world, and it takes different types of experience to run football clubs. I mean, this isn't a new situation. Paul Byrne alludes to this in his interview with BBC Spotlight. Everybody now will have seen the football finance expert, his name escapes me now on Twitter.
Kieran Maguire.
Kieran Maguire, that was it. Putting out the stark reality. Cardiff finished below us in the Championship last year. Everybody has seen their financial figures from last year. That is scary. And Graham alludes to it. The average loss in League One last season was £4 to £5 million. Burton made a loss of £8 million. Like, this is what we're dealing with. We already know that them up the road, they already had, what was it, the 20th, 21st biggest budget in the division this year. That's getting cut in half next season. Nothing's changing that. So this is the stark reality. I have faith personally that regardless of what happens between now and the end of the season, that Derek Adams and Tom Cleverley know what is going to be required to get Plymouth Argyle into the top 6 and beyond next season. I've absolutely no doubt in that whatsoever. What happens off the pitch, we're going to have to rely on good communication from the football club from Paul Byrne and Simon Hallett to keep us updated on how we're moving forward. I expect that there's probably going to be something coming out in the next few weeks via Argyle's channels from either Simon or Paul Byrne, just giving us an update on where we're at with investment and things like that. So we'll all just have to sit tight. We've covered the basic topic now. It's out there. Head over to the BBC website to read what Paul Byrne said if you didn't see the Spotlight interview last week. Right. Now, let's go a full 180 back to the positive side of tonight's episode, because on Saturday, we are playing in probably, I would say, as I load up the rest of the slate in League One, scrolling down through the games, absolutely, we are playing in one of, if not the game of the day in Sky Bet League One on Saturday. Probably only Lincoln versus Stockport at 12:30 can rival our game. But of the 3 o'clock games, this is the biggest and most exciting game of the day. Reading sits 7th in League One. We sit 10th in League One. And this is a massive, massive game in our pursuit of the playoffs. One thing that cannot be questioned now by anybody within the Argyle fan base or the wider football network is we are now a bona fide playoff contender. We have just as much of a chance as anybody around us, which is a pretty crazy thing to say given the podcast I hosted in October and November. And therefore, that deserves a sheer amount of huge credit to the players, to the coaching staff, to everybody involved.
Joe, it's just worth pointing out, 8th of November, we were 24th. And even as late as the 6th of December, we were 23rd.
I'm right. I believe I'm right in saying Adam might be able to correct me on this if I'm wrong. In the last 18 games, only Lincoln have picked up more points than us in the last 18 or 19 games or something crazy.
I can't correct you, but I believe it. I know we've practically been, I know a stat went out on the Argyle Life account that it's 2 points per game for the last 18 games, I believe, which is promotion form, isn't it? So, yeah, quite remarkable in any case, let alone when you consider what happened in the previous 18.
Yeah, it's staggering. The turnaround is amazing. And Ruby and me 7425. Did I hear we can't mathematically go down? Is that true? That's a real bad thing for Sam Down, who after we lost to Lincoln City was really worried about the confidence of the group and whether or not we'd spiral out of control as we went to Blackpool and Leyton Orient. But hey, here we are. Right, gentlemen, there are 3,000 Argyle fans heading to Berkshire on Saturday afternoon. This is just mouth-watering, isn't it? This is what was impossible, as Adam mentioned, or as Graham mentioned on the 8th of November. This is crazy.
Well, I want to correct you, Joe. I think I am going to say this. When you said we have just as much of a chance as anyone else in there, I think we've got more of a chance because I think we're a better team than every other team in that playoff hunt. And I think the statistics that you have just rattled off prove it. Those other teams are not going at 2 points a game over what is now not, you cannot say 18 games is a good run of form or, we're outperforming our data or, we're running hot or anything of that ilk. That is
significant sample size, isn't it?
It's sustainable, proven sample size. Now, obviously, that's not to say that we won't fall apart on Saturday and be terrible for the rest of the season. Of course, that could happen. This has been a mad, mad season, and it wouldn't, nothing would surprise me at this point from us going up and having a glorious win at Wembley to us finishing like 15th, amid a bunch of sort of negative feeling again. None of it would surprise me. That being said, I think the smart money has to be on us at this moment in time because I think we are, second best statistically after Lincoln. Lincoln are very, very effective at what they do, but I truly believe that when we are on it, we are the best team in the league at the moment in terms of just a pure attacking team that also looks very solid defensively. And I would much rather be in our shoes than I would be in the shoes of Stevenage, Reading, Luton, Huddersfield, who, maybe this will come back to bite me. I would stress this is not a predictive statement. My understanding is they were very, very poor at the weekend, that their fans are a bit restive at the moment. The Manning, after his little honeymoon period, doesn't really seem to be going that well there. Results haven't been terrible, but it doesn't seem like performances have been great, especially going forward. Why not? Why can't it be us? I think our performances at this point are unignorable. And yeah, we could run out of steam. I want to reiterate that. This is not me being cocky. I just think we have such a good opportunity. If you glance at the table and you don't know any of the context and you don't look at the points tallies, even you see we're 10th and think, oh, well, they're probably outsiders. We were 3 points off it. Yesterday was such a huge game in terms of winning that game in hand. I managed to talk myself into pessimism about yesterday's game, which turned out to be completely unwarranted. And yeah, now we've got a run coming up where we play Reading, Stevenage, and Huddersfield, I think, in a week. It's absolutely mouth-watering. It's heart in mouth as well, because, it could all obviously go horribly wrong in those 3 games. But I don't think any of those teams are going to want to play us at this moment in time. I think they will all be looking at that and thinking that is a really, really tough game. Reading, again, my understanding with them is they're in that league position. I've not heard very good reports about them from people who've consistently watch their games. I didn't go to the game on Boxing Day because I was down under. My understanding is that it wasn't really a 4-1 game, even though they had a man advantage. And I've heard many, many people saying that if we had scored that penalty that Talai missed with 20 minutes to go, they felt we would have actually gone on to win the game, let alone get a point. So that was obviously with 10 men having been 3-0 down very early on. Apparently at Luton last weekend, they won 3-2, but they were given all 3 of the goals by horrendous defending. I think I don't know if Jack Marriott is still injured. He was certainly injured on Saturday.
He's got a hamstring. He's out for a while, yeah.
He's a fantastic player for them.
The rest of the season, which not only helps us for the weekend, but also, if they're lacking somebody for the rest of the campaign.
Yeah,
very much.
So,
helps.
Yeah, and I think they lost last night.
1-0.
Yeah. So, look, they're a dangerous team. They've got some good players, but beyond Marriott, players who can hurt us. I think we're a better team than them, though, and I don't think we should go there with any fear whatsoever. And I think the fact we're going to have what is surely going to be the most raucous away end that we've had in League One in a comparable situation since probably that MK Dons game that we won 4-1 under Shuey in that 101 season. Obviously, Port Vale was very raucous at the end of that season, but that's a bit of a different circumstance because we'd already secured promotion. So it was a party atmosphere. But I remember going to MK Dons that day in that season, and we put on a champagne performance in a plastic stadium with no fans in it and won 4-1. And I think that really, and I remember Finn Azaz coming out after the game and saying we felt like we were the home team, So I think we've got the opportunity to go there and make a ton of noise, have a great day out. And, if we can just get even something from the game, I think even a draw would probably be a decent result to keep us right on their tail. We've got such a good chance now. And I think it's ours to go and grasp. And I think that the only team that can defeat us really is us. At the moment, the players don't look at any move for that to happen. So hopefully that can continue.
It's the 8th best home record going up against the 3rd best away record. Nobody has scored as many goals away from home as Argyle. Reading have also scored 26 at home themselves. Like this, from an overall standpoint, this is going to be a decent game of football, isn't it?
You'd like to think so. We've all been involved, I think, in great expectation, Argyle travelling crowds, and look what happens. Nothing can be ruled out. But I think to use, and Joe, you'll form this analogy better than I ever could. But if there's a horse just coming through the field that has, been way behind, and it's just, we're getting to that finish line now, and it's what's the word for it? Yeah, I'm sure somebody who commentates on racing will know the words that I'm looking for. But it feels like that, right? It feels like that, and it feels like Reading are very much, they're ahead of us as it stands, yes, but the Marriott injury feels very key, and I do think if you put the 2 squads next to each other and put the 2 lineups next to each other, that we will have the better quality. And with that in mind, football's not played on paper, of course it isn't, but we then probably start the game as favourites. So if we're looking at it in that sense, if we're looking at the fact, yeah, comment on screen with all of this in mind, with goals going in at either end, it's got 0-0 written all over it. But no, I feel as though we should go into this with optimism. Partly because I guess it feels like a no-lose situation. I don't mean that in the sense of we've got nothing to lose. We've absolutely got something to play for. It's more the case if we go back to, say, the 6th of December and we're 23rd, we perhaps thought there were going to be games like this where there's a lot on the line and it could cost us our League One status. Right now, we're looking at it with games like this. We can go in incredibly excited rather than nervous. It is heart and mouth, but it's really, really exciting to have games like this on the horizon. And I really do feel like we can do it. Marriott being out, as I say, is key. I think Lewis Wing is their other guy, as it were. And he's a very, very good player for this level. I think he had an outstanding game, at least in the first half in the reverse fixture. And I don't have the numbers to hand, but I think Marriott's got 19 goal contributions this season, and I think Wing has 18. And outside of that, there's very little. So very much he's...
You're just winging that statistic.
Something along those lines, yeah. I mean, yeah, well, I tried to have a... Now, I was going to say that I was going to bring on a pun of staying at a Marriott yesterday. I didn't even do that. I stayed at Mercure, so it's not helpful at all, is it? Oh well, I did my best. Yeah, it's keep Brewers quiet. Get our players that are in fantastic form troubling their defence. We've seen how their defence can look troubled. John refers to the reverse fixture. We lost that game 4-1. It was never a 4-1 game, despite the fact that we were down to 10 for the vast majority. Yeah, I go in excited, and I know going into these games excited with a big away crowd has come back to bite us in the past. But looking at it right now, it's hard not to see it as one of the most mouth-watering games in this division. Not just for this weekend, but I think for the point that we're at in the season as well. In terms of what's the most important game of your season is always the next one, I guess. But with the form that we're in and what's on the line, yeah, I'm enthused. I really am. And that's from someone who has managed to find himself not going, by the way. I feel like there were about 2 of us we spotted in the away end yesterday that did go to Wigan, but is not going to Reading. So how I've worked that one out, I don't know. But I'm excited either way.
Graham, I'll come to you on this, then we'll do some score predictions, and there's a handful of questions that we've not touched on talking points yet. BH13611 on YouTube asks, is there any update on injuries? Obviously, we had an update on Tuesday night that Wes Harding is going to be out for a couple of weeks. Just a small minor issue that they're going to be cautious over. Matty Sorinola is
last one on injuries, please.
Matty Sorinola is out a little bit more long term. There is, of course, the question mark now: has he played his final game for the football club because he's out of contract at the end of the season? There's not many games left, etc., etc. I don't think we're expecting anyone back for this one, though, are we? We're probably a week too soon for the likes of Hazard and Galloway.
Yeah, that's the impression that Tom Cleverley has given. I am going to Reading, and I remember I was just only thinking of it. I remember the Nick Chadwick 1-0 game when we had 4,000 there, and I think we'd have 4,000 there again if they hadn't shifted the away end around to the corner, which is a shame because it won't be a full stadium from their point of view. In terms of how important the game is, what's key is winning 3 games in a week and getting 9 points. Because every time we do that, we gain points on other teams. So for me, it's an imperative that we win. The interesting thing is we were looking at the 6th place, but actually I think 5th and 6th is up for grabs. Bradford have beaten Port Vale at the moment, so I think they and Bolton are away. So, but so many of the teams around us are playing each other. The key is we hope they draw or lose and we win. And that's where we get our momentum. And this is a momentum. We won 2 games, we've got momentum. We did the same, and then we got tripped up at Rotherham. And this is typical for Argyle, isn't it? We have hope, and then it moves into expectation. And John and Adam have already expressed expectation in spades, more than I'm prepared to do, because I want to hope all the way through to the end of the season and not expect, because for me that would be the best outcome. There will come a time when the expectation is too much and I'll have to tip over that balance, but it's a game at a time. I think the next 5 games are against people all around us, and those 5 games, so if we lose 1 and win 4, it's not the end of the world. So we've got to be prepared for the expectation to translate into disappointment at some time before the end of the season. I think we've got to win 7 out of 10 to get in the playoff spots. Maybe 6 and a draw.
We've got to be careful with these games coming up against teams around us that we don't lose multiple games in a row and confidence could spiral out of control, and that could derail our season.
I mean, Tom cleverly says game at a time. It's absolutely the right mantra to don't look ahead, take each game as it comes. And Reading will be a test. I mean, I get that they're not playing very well at the moment, but for me, and I know 4-1 was an unfair, unrepresentative score, but I did actually think they were one of the better teams at home park. And is it Lewis Wing? I think it's Lewis Wing. He was outstanding in midfield. But with Marriott out, if we can get at them in the same way as we did against Wigan, straight off, get the goal, then momentum, that's the key word. The momentum will carry us through. And we've got every chance of making it. Interestingly, the 2017-18 season under Derek Adams, we're in the same position in November and December, but we got ourselves into the playoff positions. But at the same time, in that season we're 2 points better off than we are now. And then injuries got the better of us. We lost Ryan Taylor and we fell out the promotion places, losing the vital game against Scunthorpe. So all I would say is keep hope and have less expectation.
Losing that vital game against Scunthorpe worked out well for them, didn't it?
Yeah.
Let's get some predictions then. We briefly touched on the injury news. I'm sort of glossing over it because I assume that we've all spent all day doing the 7 stations of the cross or however many there are, saying the rosary 6 times and praying to Jesus that everyone's actually got out last night fit, and we're just going to name the same team again. Because if my phone buzzes as they're going to post in the Dawn Run Mares Novices Hurdle tomorrow at Cheltenham, and it's Tom Cleverley telling me there's another injury crisis, I think I might throw myself out my window. But we're just going to assume that we're going to play the same team, and therefore, John Alsop, the score is going to be.
I almost can't bear it. You know, it's. We thought, I think there was one point a couple of weeks ago where we thought maybe for like only the 3rd time maximum in my time supporting this football club since 2002, we'd have a season where we just peter out into a boring mid-table finish with nothing on the line. And I guess, look, that could still be the case if we lose all 3 of or 4 of the next 4 games. I think it's probably over. But yeah, it's a tough one. I'm going to say it's going to be a slightly frustrating but vibesy 2-2 draw that keeps us well in it going into 2 home games that I think we actually will win.
Adam?
For 7 points a week.
Yeah, possibly on the basis of using Graham's analogy of hope rather than expectation. I am going to go with a bit of hope and just back us to just about get over the line with a 2-1.
Graham?
I am exactly the same as Adam. I think it's going to be anxiety-ridden, and it's always expect the unexpected. And how about Owendale to score the winner?
I'd pay good money to see it. So would he, probably. I am going to be a little bit different to you all. Reading 1, Plymouth Argyle 3. I think this is quite the quite the momentum now. Just looking around at the other games, because it's that time of year now where we can start looking at who everyone else is playing. Teams around us: Stockport go to Lincoln in a 12:30 kickoff. We don't have to worry about Cardiff. They're probably just about out of our range. Huddersfield have to go and play on that dreadful pitch at Port Vale, who are scrapping for their lives and preparing for a lovely trip to Stamford Bridge. Reading take on Argyle, and then Stevenage are at home to Wimbledon. Wimbledon, who are now about to go behind us with the look at the results that's happening tonight. But Stevenage are home to Wimbledon. Bradford travel to Wigan Athletic, and Wycombe Wanderers take on Luton Town in a game that features two sides who seemingly flirt with the idea of, oh, let's make ourselves playoff contenders. Oh, no, we're going to lose a couple in a row and then go on a bad run. So that will be an interesting game as well. But it all sets up to enjoy a big win at Reading and sit there and watch Port Vale mug off Huddersfield on that awful surface that they've got at Vale Park. But we shall wait and see. Let's get some questions in then before the end of tonight's show. Adam Bryan says, how are the new injuries going to impact Argyle on Saturday? Fortunately, Brian, it doesn't appear like there are any new injuries, but we coped pretty well with the injuries we had going into Tuesday night, so it shouldn't be a massive issue, should it?
Yeah, I mean, touch wood, we don't find out that we've got 5 players out based on the press conference. I think on a serious note, it makes it all the more remarkable, doesn't it? The run that we've been on with the absentees that we've had. It feels like a fantastic time ahead of the running to get that long-awaited strength and conditioning coach in place. So we've got as many as possible available for the last 10 games, but I get the impression that the finances may not allow. But hopefully, as you say, Joe, no new injuries for this one. And if we can put the same team out, which is of course not guaranteed, and you may need 1 or 2 bits and pieces for not injury-related fitness reasons, but general condition fitness reasons, we may see 1 or 2. But aside from that, I'd like to think that nothing would affect us. The only one I think that seemed to be walking particularly gingerly was perhaps Brendan Wiredu at one stage, and maybe he was okay by the end. But after he came on, it seemed like it took him a moment or 2 perhaps to get up to speed with that. But he was off the bench anyway, so if we're taking soon the same starting lineup, then obviously that would make no change.
Tom did say after the game that he was still a little bit stiff and sore and things. It wasn't anything they were surprised by, put it that way. And it may be a case that that's something that's now behind him because he's got out there and he's got some jogging and things into his legs. So, but at the moment, providing Herbie Kane stays fit, at the moment, Brendan, you would imagine, will just be used off the bench for the time being until there is a point where they can both just rotate in and out and things. Because let's not forget, before he picked up this abdominal injury, Wiredu was back in really good form, where he was making a real impact back in the team. So it seems to be happening to him at the worst possible time. Graham, another one from Brian for you. Are we going to add more academy players to fill the gaps? There's been some experience for Seb Campbell on Tuesday night. Obviously, Joe Warrow was on the bench on Saturday. It seems like Tom's picking a different one every week at the moment.
Well, I suspect both those two will, because Joe Hatch is injured, isn't he? So
no, Joe Hatch is on loan at Taunton, isn't he? He's gone back up to Taunton.
Yes, you're right. Yeah. So and Tegan's obviously injured for the season. So yes, I expect those 2 academy players certainly to be travelling and probably having 1, if not 2, spaces on the bench.
Fun question for everybody, although I kind of suspect I know what the general consensus of this question is going to be. From Darren Curtis, still plenty of players out. If we could magically choose 2 players to come back from injury for this Saturday, who would we choose? Now, who do I expect that you 3 are going to pick here?
Talai and Hazard, please.
Same.
Adam?
I don't think this is going to surprise you, but yes, exactly that.
Yeah, I you know, with all due respect to Brendan Galloway and Bradley Ibrahim, I kind of suspected that it might end up being Talai and Hazard. Although an honourable mention for Joe Rules as well, of course. Bo Sondrup asks the question, what do you guys make of Xavier Amichi's performances lately? I've got to be honest.
Well, I think he's been watching a VHS of Paul Scholes tackling masterclass is what I think of his performances recently.
I do kind of think that he's beginning to, I'm not saying make a massive impact off the bench, but I don't know what you guys think. I kind of feel in the little cameos we're seeing, there's a little bit more intent from Amici rather than just running around headless. And I mean, obviously there is that tackle at Blackpool the rest of time, but he does seem to be getting involved a little bit more off the bench now.
I mean, if you remember against Cardiff when he came on, he made 3 sliding tackles in front of the Lindas, which people are still recovering from.
He did it again last night as well. It wasn't a particularly dangerous one or anything, but he snapped into one straight after coming on, which on the one hand you love to see, but on the other hand, maybe
I mean,
a little unnecessary.
The frustrating thing with him is he has got the most beautiful left foot, which he can ping balls with. But I just don't think he suits a 4-4-2. I think he's more 4-3-3, playing up high on the right-hand side. And it just doesn't. He just doesn't do the work tracking back. If you think of Ronan Curtis in front of Joe Edwards and Xavier Amici, there's a world of difference.
Yeah, I agree. One player who wasn't, obviously we were talking about Xavier Amici there. I can't get away from how much of an impact I thought Jamie Patterson had off the bench on Saturday against Doncaster. When I watched the game back on Sunday, when the full match replay became available, I was sat there and I was quite taken. Obviously, Dale earned the right to play on Tuesday night. I was quite taken as well by Patterson's impact because I thought he made a real difference at Rotherham. Albeit, I could have put a pair of boots on and gone out there and made a real difference in the attacking third at Rotherham. But don't look like that, John. You haven't seen me in 5-a-side.
I'd rather you'd done that than stayed in the stands, to be honest, given your record of Argyle away from home.
Yeah, my cousin, who also has a worse away record than me because he's never seen us win, did mute the idea on the way home from Yorkshire that we should go to Wimbledon in a few weeks' time. But I think for the hopes of our playoff push, I think I'll probably stay at home.
And you're not going to Wembley either.
No, I'll make myself unavailable. I'll make sure I'm doing a double turkey commentary shift that weekend. Stevie Vaughan does point out as well that Wiradoo will be needed for Huddersfield because Herbie Kane, of course, cannot play in that game. So Herbie Kane basically only has to play 2 of the next 3 games. So at some point, Herbie, if you're watching, empty the tank, but just don't do yourself a mischief in the Stevenage game. That's the answer. Now, here's an interesting question that will end tonight's show on, going back to the topic we spoke about after the Wigan game. What's the worst scenario financially? Staying in League One or actually getting promoted? Because let's be real, if we get promoted, with the sound bites we're getting from the football club, we're not in a position financially to compete in the Championship.
It's staying in this league, though, isn't it? Because we'll get more money if we go up, and it's up to us. Essentially, I mean, certain things, costs will have to increase, but the amount we decide to spend on players to be competitive will be up to us. So
I do hope that BH13611 is not inadvertently suggesting that we do a Preston North End and flirt with the playoffs and then deliberately not get promoted because we want to stay in the Championship. I do hope that's not what he's suggesting we do on a lesser scale. But there we go. Gentlemen, any AOBs? Because we've been going for 1 hour and 25 now, and I think that's enough time.
Need to explain what a double turkey is, Joe, just for uninformed viewers.
A double turkey, yes. A double Turkish commentary stint is what I mean. Not a load of drumsticks and wings. But there we
Christmas
go.
household.
Exactly. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Thank you to the 1,000 of you who've given up your Wednesday night to tune in. As always, do get involved in the comments when the show's done. If you've only just joined us halfway through, it'll be live as soon as I press the end stream button for you to go back and watch in its entirety. We will be back on Sunday night. I've not yet looked at who's available, so I can't tell you who'll be joining me. But I will be here again with another motley crew. John's waving, so he's in. And I assume that Adam's probably going to be in as well. We might even drag Sam off the injury table as well. But I will let you all know, or Aaron will let you all know in a tweet on Sunday afternoon. All that's left for me to say is, gentlemen, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your week. Enjoy Saturday afternoon, those that are going. Enjoy... just enjoy the nice weather, because it's lovely out there now, isn't it? So have a good week, and we will see you all again on Sunday. Night, folks.
Cheers.